From the far reaches of space to the darkest places on Earth, join us as we explore the haunted, the cryptid, the creepy, and more. Exposing Reality Radio presents the Spectral Wolfpack Show, your paranormal nightmare, with your host, Alexander Bobolinsky.
What is up, Wolfpack? We've got a great show lined up tonight. It's going to be insane. We're going to be talking a lot of cryptids, so I'm pretty excited about that. Because lately, the cryptids side of things has been pretty lit. There's been a lot of different sightings, a lot of different pictures popping up, documentaries, and all kinds of things like that. Before we get into the show, though, I just wanted to bring up, if anyone hasn't heard yet, we're working on our documentary Madhouse, which is about me, J.P. Doyle, Keith Campbell, and Steve Brott, and our trip to Madison Seminary, and that will be coming out April 20th, 2019. So we got a page on Facebook up. You can keep up with it there. It's going to be insane. We'll probably have some trailers and things coming very soon as well. In other news, I got the Alabama Paranormal and Bigfoot Conference coming up February 9th, and yeah, other than that, it's hard for me to recall anything else very, very significant coming up. Just stay tuned. Keep an eye out on my Facebook and YouTube and everything for any updates. I do have some videos coming, of course, and everything like that. So let's get right into it. Our guest tonight, Aleksander Petakov, and I hope I said that right. We already went over that about 10 times before the show. He's a documentary filmmaker and multimedia artist, as well as an avid fan of adventure and searching for the unknown. Traveling across the United States and the world, Aleksander has looked into various cryptozoological creatures such as Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, and the Lake Champlain Monster, as well as other phenomenon in mysterious places, ranging from the paranormal Bridgewater Triangle of Massachusetts to the hermit kingdom of North Korea. He has created short documentary films and series on these subjects, among others. Aleksander, what's up, man?
Hey, how you doing tonight?
Did I mess up the name? I know we went over it, but I'm pretty sure I messed it up.
No, you're perfect.
Okay.
That was great.
Great.
You got it.
How you been doing, man?
Good. Just kind of relaxing, as I was telling you. Just kind of kicking back, winding down the night with some Red Dead Redemption 2. Of course, awesome game.
Yeah, you were telling me that they've thrown some cryptids and paranormal Easter eggs in there.
Yeah. I mean, for people who are into Rockstar games or just gaming in general, all these Easter eggs, and Red Dead Redemption 2 in particular has a lot of different mysteries and paranormal things like serial killers and vampires and giant snakes, even like Bigfoot. They always throw that in a lot of their games. So I've just kind of been, since I beat the game, I've been finding some of that stuff, and it just kind of keeps it dynamic, keeps it fun, something fun to do on a weeknight when you're kind of winding down and prepping for a show like this. So yeah, that's what I'm up to.
That's perfect. I'm definitely planning on picking that up as soon as possible. So, man, I gotta say I'm pretty jealous of some of your recent adventures. Like, I saw you went out to Utah. Utah is one of my favorite states. Just beautiful out there.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's kind of like the soul of the Wild West, if you will. That kind of vibe. It really, I think, encapsulates so much because you have so many different types of terrain, and the high mountains and the alpine kind of forest, and then the deserts and the epic arches and everything like that. So it's really quite a state. I mean, that whole area, the Southwest, and it's got like a special draw to it. I mean, if you've been there, you kind of know that sort of feeling. And it's got that weird vibe, a lot of paranormal stuff, and Native American history. So it's a great place for sure.
Man, I loved. Have you been to Salt Lake City at all?
Yeah, I was there just on sort of because I did a road trip with my girlfriend. We were sort of going from Salt Lake City, and we drove all the way down to northern Arizona, Monument Valley, that sort of area. and then looped back up the other side of Utah through Zion National Park, Bryce Canyon National Park, and then went back to Salt Lake. And I had kind of a day to myself where I just kind of went around hiking in Salt Lake, outside of Salt Lake actually, and then I went to the Great Salt Lake, of course, saw the Buffalo and Antelope Island. So it's like a really weird mix of stuff just in that little area.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved, when I was up there, I spent a lot of time at the cemetery there. Salt Lake City Cemetery was like massive, and I'm a big, I love cemeteries, so I was like, and then Bryce and Zion too are awesome places.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure the cemeteries must be pretty historic, filled with a lot of maybe gunslingers and outlaws and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually went to, when I was out in that area, we found this like, it was like a little ghost town in Utah, and there's like this cemetery, and there was like a guy buried there named Cedar Pete, and it just was like this real like desert cemetery. It was so cool. Like,
was it called Grafton Ghost Town? Was that outside
I think
of Zion?
It was. I think so.
Yeah. I went there. Yeah, I'm actually in the second part of my kind of YouTube series for Utah. I have we went through the cemetery too, and the ghost town. That was actually really cool. We went there before we went into Zion, and man, it was awesome. I was flying my drone around near the cemetery, and you could kind of go into some of the old houses. They'd been reconstructed, but it was like such a cool little place.
Man, I can't wait to see that. So tell us a little bit about like, you know, how you got into cryptids and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like many people into this sort of subject, as a kid, I grew up watching the documentaries, and I heard the stories of the Yeti and the abominable snowman, things like that. And really, the documentaries probably influenced me the more, In Search of, and some of the classic shows, the Discovery programs. I grew up in the 90s, so it was right around that time when there's some of those shows still from the 80s that were lingering, and you know, movies like Boggy Creek Monster and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that really was an influence, and from there I just sort of, you know, went into the literature, read a lot of that stuff when I was younger, you know, kind of dropped it a bit when I was in high school and college, and I studied communications. So once I got back into kind of doing my own filmmaking, I was like, I really like this stuff. I want to actually start investigating it in my own way, which is sort of through filmmaking, and that's kind of what I've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, definitely similar, like the same for me. Like, you know, just growing up watching all that stuff, and like I always say, I would always be, you know, driving around, always looking out into the woods, trying to see if I could spot a werewolf or some kind of monster, and then just onward until now. Have you ever had any paranormal experiences or anything like that? Because we do a lot of that as well on my channel.
Yeah, I've seen some of your stuff, and I know you're more into that. Well, I mean, you do a little bit of both, but I mean, I've had some weird experiences. I'm not super into like the ghost sort of stuff. I think there's probably something to it. I mean, we've all had experiences probably with death and that sort of thing, and I've had some pretty interesting experiences of my own with sort of like just recently, actually. For example, I had a dream one night that I was in like a tsunami, mm-hmm. and the next day, I literally, the first thing I did was, you know, check my phone and saw there was this big tsunami in Indonesia. So I definitely believe in this sort of premonition sort of stuff, and that kind of runs in my family too.
Yeah.
So you know, those, I don't know if I would consider those really paranormal. I guess it's spiritual or supernatural, maybe. I guess it fits into paranormal. But you know, as a kid, you know, you hear stuff kind of stomping around the night in the house. You think it's a ghost. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I've never really gotten super into that, but yeah, I think there's something to it, probably.
Nice. Yeah, and those dreams, those are always very interesting, the premonition dreams. And we actually had a dream guy on here a couple weeks ago. It was really interesting to hear all about what he does and like some of the you know, dream interpretations and things. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it was really weird. That was the first time. My mom, you know, she's had that kind of happen to her for a while, but that was the first time I experienced that, and I was just kind of weirded out. You know, you're used to having weird dreams, you know, whatever, that happens from time to time. But when you actually, the first thing you do, you check the news, and it's like there was a big tsunami.
Yeah.
It kind of really stuck with me.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. So you started filmmaking and everything, what when you got kind of linked up with Small Town Monsters, when did that happen exactly?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was a couple years ago. I have my Loch Ness documentary, which I saw you just commented on that a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Seth had seen that online, and he had contacted me, and we just kind of became friends, started talking, and that eventually developed into working on a series. He actually had an event down in Ohio called Minerva Monster Day.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2016, I want to say. And they screened my Loch Ness documentary and another sort of Bigfoot documentary. And, we just kind of became buddies. And then he had this idea for the series, and he had been talking about doing a Champ documentary. And I really wanted to do a Champ documentary since I live in New England.
Yeah.
It's something I've always been interested in. I felt that Champ, Loch Ness gets all the spotlight. Champ is sort of North America's version of that. And I think even bigger mystery than Loch Ness, perhaps. That's kind of bold to say, but I think there's a longer sort of known or documented history of it. So
mm-hmm.
I'd always wanted to do that. And then William Dranginis, who sadly passed away just last month,
yeah,
he kind of contacted me out of the blue. I met him at the Mothman event a couple of years ago, and he was like, oh, if you want to come by, we're doing our annual expedition with Scott Martis up at the lake. And the pieces all just kind of came together. There's like three sort of different things going on, and they all sort of fell into place, and that's how sort of On the Trail of ... Champ got started. And now, obviously, that's branching into Seth doing a series on Bigfoot, and who knows what will come next. So, yeah.
Man, that's great. I love Scott. Me and Scott met at Creature Weekend, and we're both from Alabama, so we just hit it off right away.
Alabama boys, right? Nice.
Mm-hmm. And then,
he's a treasure trove of knowledge on the Champ subject.
Yeah.
I mean, he was basically my main consultant for when I was in post-production. Any question I had for him, because I did a lot of research for it, any sort of question I had about what happened here, this date, he would send me like 3 PDFs, and within like a 5-minute time period. So he's very good on that. He definitely, like I said, is really a wealth of knowledge for Champ and for all sorts of aquatic cryptids as well.
Yeah. So that's awesome, man. And I love that you've done some of these like little films and everything in these other countries and stuff. Like that's definitely. I'm an adventurer myself too. What was it like going to Loch Ness and everything? Was it pretty cool?
It was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. It was like back in 2015, and that was sort of my first kind of crypto documentary, really,
mm-hmm.
that I decided to do. When I go places, I always research the local history and the folklore and see if there's any cryptids, if I know it's an area. So obviously a place like Loch Ness, I mean, you have something to work with there. And I just decided to kind of shoot a little short documentary and, interviewing people who were involved with it. Steve Feltham, who's one of the researchers and that sort of thing. But yeah, going to Loch Ness, I mean, it's like going to Disneyland for people who are into this subject, because you grow up watching this place on TV. And it was interesting to actually be there in person and see how different it is from your perception based on shows and pictures and books you've read. So that was really neat. But yeah, it's a very beautiful place. The Scottish Highlands are incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like something out of the Lord of the Rings with the mountains and the green valleys, and it's a pretty epic place for sure.
Man, I would love to go there someday. I thought it was cool too. Like, I think if these towns have these legends like this, I mean, I thought it was cool they had the shop and everything with like little things you could pick up, and because like the town where Alti, what is it, Darien, Georgia, I think.
Darien, Georgia, yeah.
They didn't have like any T-shirts or anything. I was kind of depressed. I was like, man, I would totally buy an Alti T-shirt. I was like,
yeah, I mean, that would be awesome. I know with Loch Ness, right? So it's the biggest draw to Loch Ness is sort of the monster. So that's, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the most visited place in Scotland in terms of tourists. So they really, it's kind of like their lifeline there. So they really try to emphasize on that. But I can relate to the Alti thing. I mean, Lake Champlain people think that are in this community think, oh wow, yeah, everyone up there knows about it, but it's actually not as common as you think. I mean, there used to be sort of a champ craze in the 80s and the 90s, and it sort of died off. And it really depends who you talk to. I mean, some gift shops, like most gift shops around the lake, will carry like a little champ shirt or stuff like that, but it's not very common. Like, it's not like at Loch Ness where people are there pretty much just to kind of play on the whole Nessie legend. It's very different. Lake Champlain already has tourism with boating, fishing, like world-class fishing, water sports, all sorts of stuff, ferries. So it's got its own sort of industry without Champ. So if Champ is, used in a place like Fort Henry, New York, that's a different story, but it's not on the whole lake like Loch Ness.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I wasn't aware about the eels in Loch Ness. I thought that was interesting to hear.
Yeah. I mean, there's both Lake Champlain and Loch Ness tend to have like eels. So some of the theories are perhaps they're very large eels that are being seen. I mean, that's definitely possible. Eels can get to like a substantial size. I'm no expert in eels, of course, but if you saw like a 5-foot eel that was like half a foot thick just kind of pop out of the water and swim by your boat, you'd think, wow, that's by definition a monster, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Definitely. After all of your work filming on the Trail of Champ and everything, like what is your opinion on the Lake Champlain monster? Like, do you think it's there? Do you think it's real?
Yeah, that's always a good question. See, I mean, I try to be as objective as possible, and you got to be sort of scientific with this sort of stuff and maintain a healthy dose of skepticism because, you can't just take everything at face value and accept it. But at Lake Champlain, it's really interesting just because, having done a deep dive, metaphorically speaking, into the history of the subject, it seems like there's something there. I don't know what it is, but from the eyewitnesses I talked to that were extremely credible with sightings that were pretty extraordinary. I mean, and the circumstance of Lake Champlain, if you know the history about how just as recently as 10,000 years ago it used to be part of the ocean, and there's examples of marine life that were living in that kind of, it was an inlet in the Champlain Sea. They have examples of creatures from that time period that are, buried or fossilized in the Vermont side, the New York side, and some fish, perhaps like the salmon, that actually adapted from saltwater to freshwater. So there seems to be a lot of factors kind of converging into, I think, there's a definite possibility there might be something unknown in the lake. I don't know exactly what it is, and I don't know if it's a dinosaur. I mean, that seems a little far-fetched to me, but, there's something going on. People are seeing something, and it's a very unusual lake. It's got a lot of strange characteristics and very strange weather, so it's a very mysterious place in general. It gives off like a very kind of ancient or prehistoric vibe. There's like these swamps and these big cliffs, and there's supposedly underwater caves. I mean, there's caves above ground that are actually remnants from the sea that exist around Lake Champlain. So it's still a mysterious body of water, even though humans have been living near and around it since it became a lake, when it was connected to the ocean, when sort of the first people moved into the area.
Man. Yeah, I remember when Scott was on my show last time, we talked about his last expedition up there, and we did go into some of those caves. Yeah, I would love to be able to dive into some of those places and do some investigating up there. I've never been. But
yeah, well, if you're around the area, man, let me know, and we can head out there. And there's researchers like Katie Elizabeth, and I know a lot of the spots now too. And my brother actually goes to college in Vermont, so he's very close to the lakes. Whenever I go up there and visit him, I make sure to kind of stop by that area and sort of pay my respect, because it's a beautiful setting. I mean, monster myth aside, it's a really beautiful lake. You've got the mountains on both sides, in the upstate New York, the Adirondacks, and the Green Mountains in Vermont, and you've got these cliffs and inlets and bays, and Burlington's a pretty cool city. So it's a very beautiful place just to visit as a tourist or just passing through.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely do that. I might actually have a trip coming up to New York in a few months, so that will be
nice.
That would be awesome. So now you've been working on some other stuff, like you've been working on the film about the mountain lions, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So sort of this fall I transitioned into doing a documentary called Lions of the East, and that was sort of spur of the moment kind of thing where I just sort of was like, well, you know, I always hear about these mountain lion stories in New England, tons of them all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, people who aren't even into cryptozoology, don't even have anything to do with the subject, are having these sightings. And it's a huge debate. Like, there's a big debate going on in the states between sort of the state governments and people who are woodsmen who are out there saying they're having sightings, and there's hoaxes. There's all kinds of stuff. I'm like, man, this is like a cryptozoology sort of case. It's really more mainstream than anything else, because I think, like I've said to a lot of people that I've talked to about this, it's sort of a more, if you want to say, credible cryptid, right? Than more to the general public than like a champ or a Bigfoot would be. Mm-hmm. Mountain lions are creatures that are real. I mean, they exist. They're biologically identified, and they used to live all in the East Coast. And, you know, their range is now further west. You know, you have some population supposedly in parts of the Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, that sort of area. But, you know, the established range is like the North Dakotas and then west. North and South Dakota, west. The Rockies, you know, throughout the Pacific Northwest, that's their range. But people are seeing them, and people have been seeing them for quite a while in this area. Pretty credible sightings. So I thought it was really interesting, and that's just kind of something I dove right into, and I actually have a lot of interviews and pretty interesting stuff coming up with that.
That's great, man. I like that. Yeah, when I saw that, it reminded me of when I was through hiking the Appalachian Trail, we had a sighting of one in Vermont. We had came across this bridge, and this dude was like playing bagpipes and stuff. It was like a really weird moment. Like this crazy storm rolled in, and we were hiking up the ridge, and I can't remember like exactly the area we were in. I can try to figure it out to let you know, but it was like crazy storm. Lightning was striking. We could smell like burning trees. And then we like look over and we see this. It looked like a Black Panther or something, like kind of walk across. And my friend was like, "Dude, that was a big cat." And I was like,
"Wow,
oh crap!"
No kidding, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, and so
it was like a Black Panther sort of thing. It wasn't like the typical kind of tawny beige color.
That's what it looked like to us, and it might have just been because when the storm rolled in, it got kind of like, you know, it was like darker in the forest there, but that's what it looked like to us. And then we were kind of freaked out because, you know, we had to pull off and set up our tents because the storm got like insane. And we had actually,
at least you were in a group, right? You weren't hiking alone. I know a lot of people on the AT that end up, you know, breaking off from a group and they hike alone and see something like that, be freaking out.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'll try to get in touch with my friend and ask him what he remembers about it. But yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Pretty cool. I mean, you're not alone in Vermont, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Next weekend, actually, I have a film shoot in Vermont on Saturday. I'm joining a researcher out there who uses sort of roadkill deer and that sort of stuff to bait and try and get stuff on his game camera. So nice. Pretty excited for that when I head up into like some mountainous spot. But yeah, I mean, the whole Northeast, especially along the Appalachian Trail, there's actually been quite a few sightings throughout New Hampshire too. Did you complete the whole Appalachian Trail?
Yeah, in 2014 we did full southbound through hike. It took about 5.5 months, and started in Maine and hiked south because it was easier for us to hike back to home. So.
Right. Sobo, yeah, I got you. No, yeah, that's awesome. I'm a big hiker myself. We have obviously the White Mountains here, so you would have hiked through all my favorite kind of stomping grounds. And in New Hampshire, we have what they call the 48 4,000 footers. Mm-hmm. So there's 48 peaks that are above that. You know, I've hiked sections of the Appalachian Trail just doing those, and I'm almost done with those. But yeah, I'm a big hiker, so I always like seeing the AT guys, the northbound, as I'm going through that area. But you know, I've done sections down in the Smokies too. But I don't know, it just seems like an intense endeavor. But to get to my point, there have been a lot of sightings kind of along the Appalachian Trail and in that area. And I mean, it makes sense. It's a trail that's frequently used, and wildlife tend to actually use a lot of human trails as well, kind of link up to game trails and that sort of thing. And I'm sure you saw deer and other types of animals as well. So,
oh yeah.
Do you see any bears or anything like that?
Yeah, on the whole trail, I saw a lot of bears actually. Like it was in the 40s or so, like a lot of bears.
Crazy.
And
That's nuts.
Some people went through the whole trail not seeing one. You know, in all my hikes, I've definitely seen well over 50 at this point, and yeah, it's just they're one of my favorite animals. I think I have like a connection to them or something.
Yeah, you're lucky, man. I in all my time out in the woods, I've not seen, aside from in Shenandoah National Park.
Oh yeah,
I caught in a tree and a mom somewhere. But aside from that, I've never seen one up in New England. I've come across, dozens of tracks and scat and stuff like that. And I used to do animal tracking as well in high school. And, we'd come across them down the Smokies too. And I've never seen one live. And it's just funny because we would hear these stories. And I'd been up there too in the summers. And when I was a kid, I remember going up in the mountains, like a little vacation with the family. And, they'd be like, oh, there's a bear in the neighborhood near the condos. And you wake up in the morning, you see trash everywhere because the bear got in the dumpster. But there's 30,000 of them in New England. And, New England's a pretty small area. So it's kind of crazy how that many of them stay pretty well hidden.
Yeah, seriously. Like, I was surprised when I would meet people on the trail who had, been going just as long as me. And they're like, I haven't seen a bear yet. And I was like, really? Like, they'll just be, like, running out in front of me on the trail, like, every day. Like, I thought this was, like, normal. One day I woke up one morning and there was literally a baby bear right in front of me, like, outside of the shelter. And, like, I freaked out because it was, like, so cute. But I was like, where's the mom? Oh, my God.
Was it a 3-wall shelter or was it, like, closed off?
3-wall, yeah. And it was was in the Shenandoahs.
I always worry about those ones when I stay in the 3 walls because I'm kind of thinking something's going to grab me from the outside. I'd rather be in a tent and you get that kind of false sense of security because you're close to something. But yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, bears are cool. Have you heard about? It's around Glastonbury Mountain in Vermont. The man-eating rock up there.
Yeah, that's actually that area called sort of the Bennington Triangle. I don't know if you've heard of that.
A little bit.
A buddy of mine, Joseph Citro, who's a author of Vermont kind of folklorist. He's done a lot of champ stuff. Really great guy. He's helping me out with the Mountain Lion Project. He actually had a sighting as well, and we're going to check out some cool spots where like the last mountain lion known in Vermont was killed, that sort of stuff. But he actually has a great thing with Stephen Bissett, which is the Vermont Monster Guide, where they have all the little stories, and they have the cool illustration of the man-eating rock.
Yep.
But from what I know, that area, that Glastonbury Mountain, has a lot of people disappeared in that area. You have the rock story, and then you have sort of like a Bigfoot-type creature, even seen up in the 1800s. So it's kind of, aptly nicknamed the Bennington Triangle.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that because we were like night hiking through there on the trail and stuff. And now I'm like, oh crap!
Probably better that you didn't know that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I knew about like the man-eating rock because that's one reason we're gonna go night hiking the man-eating rock, but I didn't know about the Bennington Triangle. But man, that whole area up there is like wild. Like I love
it. It is, man. I mean, New England for such a small region. I mean, there's a lot of great regions in the United States, but New England in particular has, just all these little states. Everything's compacted, and there's a lot of weird stuff, whether it's the cryptozoology side or sort of the more paranormal, some of the old battlefields and even the times of the Indians. And Vermont has a lot of weird history itself, and it's a really cool place. So and it's nice, like I said, because it's so small. You can kind of travel from. You can hit 3 states in a day, basically, in like a 4 or 5 hour time span, which doesn't really happen in other parts of the country. So that's something that's nice, just being able to kind of zip off somewhere for a day. And like for me, even the White Mountains are only 2.5 hours away. So I just kind of up there, do a day hike, or it's nice for like a weekend trip, that sort of thing.
That's amazing, man. I loved the Whites. Like that was definitely one of my favorite parts of the trail. Mount Madison almost killed us because there was like 90-mile-per-hour winds. I was like,
oh my God, yeah, the presidential range is crazy, man. It really is.
Yeah, you never think.
I stayed out there at the Lakes of the Clouds hut. You probably passed by there right before you hit Washington. It's right near Mount Monroe. Stayed out there like September, and I woke up at like 5 a.m. to try and go see the sunset. This was like early September. I mean, it's 70-degree days, and it was like 20-something degrees when I stepped outside, just wind blowing. I mean, it's got its own sort of weather situation with Mount Washington and that whole area.
Yeah, it's insane. I've heard, I think it was Mount Washington and also Mount Katahdin, that there's like legends of like phoenix and dragons up there or something, like living in the caves.
Yeah. Maybe. I haven't heard anything about Mount Washington. I mean, Mount Washington has had a lot of people that have died on it, and they say the Lakes of the Clouds hut is haunted, and supposedly there's like ghosts at the summit. And I know with Katahdin, there's like an old kind of Native American tale called the Pamula, which is some kind of like a spiritual kind of creature. But I think maybe that's something that happened online, where there's also the story of Pamula where it's sort of like a Bigfoot-like creature that said to live up on the mountain. But I don't know if that's just people sort of conflating older stories with the want to kind of fit the Bigfoot idea in the modern day. So I'm not too sure. But I do know the Pamula, kind of what they called Katahdin actually in that area, was like the reindeer moose kind of creature, something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even know about that. Yeah, like most of the stuff that I would hear would just be from like other hikers and things, and then I would start, like, I found that Vermont Monster book that had like the fur-bearing trout and the man-eating rock.
Yeah,
because I'm like being into this stuff. When I was hiking the trail, I was always looking for those like ghost legends and monster legends, and when I could, because you're kind of limited to whatever you come across on the trail or in town.
Right. Yeah, that's a massive endeavor. Well, yeah, you were hitting some great spots. I mean, the whole Appalachian Mountain Range from north to south is chock full of legends and stories, and just it's such a great mountain range. Really awesome. All the mountain ranges, I guess, within it are just amazing.
Yeah, like each one has its little special parts and everything. And don't get me started on the huts, man. They fed us very well. We did the work for stay. And
yeah.
Man, it was good.
Whenever I'm up there, I always, if it's in that season, I guess September, August, that sort of thing, you always see the thru hikers, and they're the ones that are sleeping on the floors out in the main area and that sort of stuff. And yeah, they do. If you put the work in, they'll feed you pretty well. Usually if there's like leftovers of dinner, and they cook some good food up there for sure. Yeah,
definitely. It's just an awesome place. Back into the cryptids, I saw recently you did an interview with Colin the Crypto Kid. I think he's going to be on my show in a few weeks.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that was, I did a whole series of interviews at the International Cryptozoology Conference back in September. Was speaking at that, and I had the pleasure of speaking with some awesome people like Dr. Meldrum. Obviously, people in the Bigfoot world will know him. Mm-hmm. Dr. Todd Disotell as well. Andy McGrath, Beast of Britain. He came over, across the pond there.
Nice.
Colin, of course. So I did some kind of cool interviews with each of them, and I asked them about what kind of got them interested in this subject and their favorite sort of cryptid, and kind of funnier questions like who would win, like a Yeti or a Sasquatch, that sort of thing.
Yes.
It's really interesting to get an anthropologist, kind of opinion on who would win, Sasquatch versus Yeti. I don't think they really get asked that very often.
That's awesome, man. What do you think about Bigfoot versus Dogman?
Ooh, that's a tough one, man. I don't know. I mean, I feel like Bigfoot probably has the weight class. Like, they're probably in two separate weight classes. I don't know. Dogman kind of strikes me as more sort of skinnier, I don't know, lankier, but not as powerful. Maybe with the jaws and the fangs, but I think Bigfoot probably has the muscle mass. Like with the gorillas. I mean, they say like a gorilla is, 3 times the strength of a man?
Yeah.
So I imagine like a Sasquatch. That's got to be staggering.
Yeah, I imagine it could easily rip me completely in half if it wanted to, but I don't think that... I mean, from my investigations, I haven't had anything really violent or anything like threatening that I've experienced, but I have had some... There was one night something was snapping branches and it pushed over a tree like near my tent.
Wow.
But then it was like completely... Yeah, and then it was like completely silent the rest of the night. And I was like, what the hell? So with your, like, have you done a lot of, since you've done a lot of hiking and everything, have you had any experiences or anything that you thought might be a Bigfoot?
Not hiking. I mean, surprisingly enough, for the most part, I think when you're hiking, you're kind of staying on the trails for the, sort of areas where you might not even see other animals. Or it's just the luck of the draw, like we said with the bear stuff. Like, you saw so many bears. I really haven't seen many. I've never really had an experience out hiking that was super weird. I've done, research, and I used to have this kind of spot I'd go up to in the White Mountains and research with a friend of mine for a documentary I was doing, which is actually on my Sasquatch Out of the Shadows channel. And we had some kind of weird stuff going on. And nothing I can say is conclusive. I mean, like I said, I still got to be a little bit skeptical. I've never had a sighting or anything like that, so I don't know. I've talked to, dozens and dozens of witnesses that have had really compelling sightings, things that lead me to believe that they believe what they see.
Mm-hmm.
They're truly not making this up, but I can't really say one way or another if it's, true or not. We still have to kind of deal with the having hard evidence and that sort of thing. And
yeah.
So yeah, no, I haven't really had any hiking experiences, unfortunately, but with other sort of investigating, that sort of stuff, we've had some interesting stuff happen, heard weird sounds, like strange kind of stick structure type stuff. I know a lot of people say that's sort of controversial, but, they're interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all kind of a guessing game. Nobody's really an expert. Maybe some people may know a little bit more than others just based on experience, but, when somebody just comes out swinging and says, like, I know what they are, what they're going to do, it's like, all right, well, if you do, like, where are they? Maybe they proved it to themselves, but can they prove it to everyone else? I don't know.
Exactly, perfectly put. I mean, I'm pretty much the same way. Like, even with, I had what I believe was a sighting. I never saw a face, but I still remain, somewhat skeptical. I am a believer, but I want that hard hitting proof. I want to find that. So, and then like you said, like about the hiking thing, I noticed that the other day when you're walking, you're like, paying attention to your feet. So something could literally walk right in front of you and you might not even see it. So it's like,
it's really, I think when we're in a sort of situation, because we're so used to uniformity, like you drive on a road, you walk on a sidewalk, you walk in a designated path. People don't really stray off the path very much. I've had pretty funny experiences where, I would just sit in like a little patch of woods next to a trail, literally wearing a red, bright, like sweater or something in the fall. Not much leaf cover, and I had an entire class of high schoolers pass me by, not even glimpse at me, not even look at me. They had no idea what was going on. I was just sitting on a rock, just looking, because I was, like, when are they going to spot me? And they didn't even see me. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting how your awareness, like you said, you're paying attention to your feet. You're not usually looking up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something can be above you, but we're typically oblivious, and we're talking and we're loud when we're in the woods. We don't act like animals. I mean, you have to, when a person goes through the woods, it's like an elephant. So you got to kind of sit down, let the woods calm down 15, 20 minutes, and then maybe you might see wildlife and that sort of thing, kind of as the forest goes back to normal.
Yeah, because like I've said, I mean, like, we get out of our car, we slam our doors, like you said, we're walking through like an elephant through the woods, and I've had people too walk right past me and not even notice me, and it's just hilarious. But I mean, it just shows you. I mean, there's been times where I've definitely missed things that I saw later in film, like an animal or something that I missed. It was
yeah.
And they
that's the thing, like, if you're able to be think of an animal that's stealthy. That's kind of what they do. That's their entire sort of mode of trying to stay alive, is staying hidden and evade people, basically. We're just not paying attention. We just walk right by them. And then, like you said, afterwards you might notice, wow, this was there. I didn't even see that.
Yep. And then the natural camouflage, like people always post the pictures of deer where it's like a deer sitting on the ground and they're like, find the deer. It might take you 10 minutes to find.
So yeah, with a deer, and imagine something more vastly intelligent, like a big cat, mountain lion. These sort of animals, they're extremely elusive. And, think about like a house cat. If you had a house cat, they're very stealthy. They move quietly. They do their little hunting. And, you throw them out in the woods, they can hide and kind of evade people. So mountain lion. And then think of something even more intelligent like an ape. I mean, you've got chimps and gorillas and those sorts of creatures that a whole, herd of them can practically stay hidden when people are coming through. Just they hunker down and they're using that intelligence. So, it's really interesting how we most of us, we have lost our sense of kind of union with the woods and with nature, city slickers and that sort of stuff. You put most people out in the woods today, they don't know what they're doing. They'll go tripping over themselves. So it's really not that hard, I think, to evade people like that. So yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like you said, if they are, extremely intelligent, which I think they are. I mean, there's been times where I felt like they were like right near me and I just couldn't see them or something. And it's just like kind of freaks you out when you're in the woods by yourself at night.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they exist, they would have to be intelligent to, stay hidden to that extent.
Yeah.
Unlike some animals that, they may be stealthy, but they've still been killed and hunted and that sort of thing. So they'd have to be extremely, extremely intelligent, and I don't think anyone who's into the subject would say that they're just dumb apes that just wander around, because if that were the case, you probably would have had one a long time ago.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think one of my friends actually got a comment recently about someone like referring to them as dumb apes and stuff. I was like, what? They were like kind of being mean to him. And what do you think about like how there's just sightings kind of all over the place, like all over the country, all over different parts of the world of, similar creatures that people are seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. If you look at it from, obviously there's competing camps. There's more physical and sort of supernatural side to it. I'm not really sold on either. I'm just kind of observing it. But, if you look at it from the physical standpoint, there's never really been a time in history where human beings, Homo sapiens, are the only type of hominid or creature, in the ape family that are alive. So obviously today we have, our cousins, gorillas, chimps, orangutans, and you have all these different monkeys and that sort of stuff. And in the past, we're discovering so many more species that we didn't know about, like the hobbit, the Homo floresiensis in Indonesia, in Flores, and then in Russia they're discovering the Denisovans and all these other sort of branches off of our family lineage. So is it possible that some of those branches could have, adapted and survived and kind of evolved parallel to us? I mean, maybe, because it seems like in different parts of the world you have different things being seen, like something you see in the Pacific Northwest seems to be different than what they see over in Russia or even in the Himalayas with like the Yeti. Like it's maybe regional adaptations, I don't know. But then you have the orang pendek, in Indonesia, where it's like a small person kind of thing, small hairy sort of person.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting. Really interesting. There's all these stories and all the native folklore, really across North America and Asia and Australia, all sorts of these places. It says a lot. Maybe it says a lot about us as humans, that we have like a need to have some sort of thing that's like us but different, more in union with nature, because we kind of separate ourselves from nature, like I said. I mean, I don't know, but it's interesting to ponder about.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've been getting into, like I've been reading a lot about like the Fae and the little people, and stories about them being able to transform into larger monsters and things like that. So some kind of, maybe, I always like to think about the possibility of it being some type of nature, like guardian or some type of nature, something that is like so adapted to nature, and it's like that's how it lives and we live how we live. like you said, we've kind of lost touch with that side. But yeah, I love all.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about just that, like I said, with sort of imagine, take two people, thousands of years ago. One, you adapt to the sort of lifestyle, agriculture, cities, that sort of thing. The other person, you let them just live in the woods. I mean, in thousands of years, they'd probably be vastly different. Maybe they're just as intelligent as each other. Let's say two humans, but you have people that live more in tune with nature that do exist. Some of these tribes and more older cultures. So imagine a creature that living in the woods and very adapted to that environment. I mean, like with species we know about, gorillas and other species, they're extremely adapted to that environment, and they know how to use it to their advantage, just like we know how to use our weaponry and everything we have at our disposal sort of to our advantage, and that's how we've taken over the world.
Yeah, seriously. No, that's all great thoughts to think about. Like, I mean, when you you start.
I think that's an interesting thing about the whole Sasquatch subject. I mean, a lot of people in the mainstream sort of everyday person, they think it's all just a joke. It's kind of pop culture, but you get into some pretty philosophical sort of modes of thinking with this sort of subject, because it really, like I said, it reflects a lot about us as a species and how we've evolved, and our sort of mythology and our need for some kind of a mystery and a monster. I think that really kind of makes you extrapolate a little bit and just think about these sort of things probably more than you would just thinking about, deer or moose or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. And then when you start diving into the native lore and even something I was reading the other day about Viking lore of these giant hairy monsters, and in my area the Native Americans, one of the tribes had the Champlain, which was this man-eating ogre that lives deep in the woods in a cave, and so it's
it's remarkable. I mean, some of the things some of my favorite examples are out in the Pacific Northwest. Some of those tribes, they have these costumes and masks they put on that I'm sure you've seen. And there's this one picture taken the 1930s, 40s, where they have this costume, and it looks like a modern day Bigfoot costume. Kind of funny looking because it's not exactly anatomically correct, but it's if you're wearing a joke Bigfoot costume, and that's sort of what their culture would wear in rituals, and it's wow, that really looks like an ape. And they have these masks with these facial features, and it just really makes you wonder how a tribe living in the middle of kind of these remote areas of British Columbia modern day, how they would have kind of anatomical references to creatures that look like apes that hadn't been discovered. And then you go across the country and you have the stone giant legends from the upstate New York, and I've got these really cool pictures that show these big creatures with sticks chasing a bunch of Indians, and it's just what would possibly make them think about these sort of things? I don't know. Did they see a real creature that influenced their sort of portrayal? I really don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I think that's something people in this subject are dealing with pretty frequently.
Seriously, yeah, it's wild stuff, and then even I've seen there's that one medieval painting of a knight fighting one and stuff, and
oh yeah, I mean the whole Santa Claus story and the wood woes, how that was European folklore, and that ties right in Russia, and the folklore there that exists of these hairy creatures and kind of Neanderthal and we have, obviously, are ingrained in our minds. We used to live with Neanderthals and other kind of branches of the Homo line, so to speak. So, I mean, we supposedly wiped them all out, aside from the theories of these maybe pockets of them that survived. But, so that we have that ingrained sort of culturally. So maybe that's something that we pass down from generation to generation. Who knows? Like I said, I keep saying that people in this subject, they deal with these subjects a lot, and it gets very philosophical and very anthropological as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I definitely love hearing everyone's different thoughts and opinions on this. Yeah, and I'm just I love thinking about how if there is these things that are so adapted to the woods, and like being out there as we are, what if they are just there watching us and everything? Like, it's so crazy to think about. Like, they could be there watching you and you might not even know it because they're very well adapted to that environment.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like someone coming to your house and you see them in your yard. I mean, you notice them right away, or maybe somebody's been messing with your stuff and you see a difference. Like, I know someone comes into your room, for example, and moves a bunch of stuff. You're like, that's not right. Well, when we go to the woods and maybe set up a campfire, we're setting up in somebody's backyard. Plenty of animals notice, that we have a scent and we create an impact. So, like I said, if it's a creature that's very intelligent, it's going to know this. Like, you can kind of navigate your room or your house, apartment, whatever, in the dark and not trip over everything. You have to imagine that's probably what creatures in the woods are like, because that's their home.
Yeah. I think next time I go out, I'm going to try the bird box method and just put a blindfold on and walk through the woods with my camera.
Oh, God.
I actually,
I
actually just got a AX33, so I'm going to be doing a lot of night vision with my deadlight and everything soon. It's going to be
sweet.
Intense.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Yeah, I mean, the area. I've never been to Alabama, actually, surprisingly, but might have to come down there at some point, check out the spots you guys have. But do you have like some national forests and spots that you kind of go to, and is there like a lot of sightings in your area?
Yeah, we got Talladega National Forest, which is around, I think, 400,000 acres, and we got the Bankhead National Forest and a bunch of other little like state parks and forests. I think the other day I was looking, Alabama's got like a 70% coverage.
Wow.
There's a lot of forests, a lot of we got swamps and a lot of diversity in our ecosystem as well. But yeah, the main thing.
The swamps, I really want to get out to the swamps. I haven't been to Louisiana either. Got to get out there and check out the stories of the Rougarou and kind of the honey island stuff. And I think that would be sweet to check that out at some point. Yeah,
I love swamps. Like, I'm not too familiar with the terrain and the creatures and like with how to deal with them and everything, but I love going. I'm always like,
what is like? You got to worry about gators and like cottonmouth, right? Cottonmouth is like the most venomous snake in North America, I think.
Yeah, you don't.
And I was watching one of those videos about it, and it was like that guy, Brave Wilderness. I don't know if what's that guy? Coyote Peterson. You've seen that guy on YouTube. He's like kind of a modern Steve Irwin.
Oh, yeah.
He did a video. Yeah, he did a video about differentiating like a cottonmouth and another type of snake that's not venomous, but they look super similar. But if you get bit by like a cottonmouth, you're pretty much like done. I mean, it's extreme. It's like kills you right away. So swamps, everything's trying to kill you.
Yeah.
And of course, down parts of Florida, you've got like the panthers too, the Florida mountain lions down there.
Yep.
Black bears, skunk apes. I mean, what's next? Like, and then all these escaped pets too. That people are saying that there's like pythons and orangutans that have escaped from labs and all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, it seems like a cool place to hang out though for a little bit.
Seriously, I might actually be going down there to visit Scott soon, Scott Martis, and we might go on a little skunk ape hunt, maybe some other
Definitely,
stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, and for some reason that reminded me of a question I wanted to ask. Do you think orang pendek versus Sasquatch? No, I'm just kidding. I think we know who would win that fight.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was like tough, but it looks like it's like one Sasquatch versus like 7 orang pendeks. Maybe they could kind of like overpower him, like the Gulliver's Travels, where they like tie the giant down. Maybe they could do something like that.
Seriously. So what would you say like your top 5 cryptids are?
Oof, that's tough. Man. It's tough to say. I mean, Champ is obviously in the top tier for sure. That's probably one of my favorite ones. I like the Sasquatch stuff, but it's definitely not my favorite. The Sasquatch thing is really cool because there's so much of it. Like, almost wherever you go, there's different regional stories, Momo, skunk apes, kind of the classic Patterson-Gimlin sort of stuff, Pacific Northwest, the Grassman. There's a lot of different, like, regional stories up here. There's the Wood Devils. There's all kinds of stuff. But I think with Champ, because it's so, like, localized, it's just in one lake, just in one area. Sure, it's a big lake like Loch Ness, but it's just a very unique thing. So almost like the Mothman too. Mothman's definitely one of those too, because it's such a, because obviously that's more than just cryptozoology. I think there's a whole other element to that too, but it's only in one place for the most part. I mean, now there's supposedly sightings in other places, but so yeah, I'd probably put Champ up there. Stuff like unique cases like the Dover Demon, that sort of thing. The thylacine, I really like the thylacine actually.
Yeah.
Like the Tasmanian tiger, especially with all the recent stuff.
Yeah.
And there's that great movie with Willem Dafoe, which is The Hunter, I think it's called. I don't know if you've seen it. I really recommend it. He kind of goes and hunts like the last living thylacine. Really cool.
Wow.
That sort of stuff. I kind of like some of the weirder ones too. I mean, some of the shows I watched when I was a kid, they had like Megalania, which was like this giant Komodo dragon type lizard in Australia that people supposedly still see, even though it's pretty far fetched. But yeah, it's tough to pick a favorite. I'm just kind of listing things off at this point. But
I feel you.
We'll just stick with Champ for now, just because it definitely, that whole area has like a special place in my heart for sure.
Yeah. I remember watching one on the Hodag. And,
yeah.
Trying to
think, that's what the whole like Paul Bunyan sort of things that I think people conflate that a lot with like being cryptids, but it's between the folklore and the cryptids, and there's plenty of cryptids that I guess would be considered just strictly folklore. I mean, I did a whole map back in the fall of all the cryptids in New England, and you've got like the weird stuff from the Pukwudgies to the Wampanoag sort of folklore to stuff like mountain lions, which are kind of on that spectrum of like believability to probably just folklore, as much as we'd like it to be true. But yeah, so there's a lot in there for basically anyone who really gets into cryptozoology. You've got some sort of area you're going to be interested in, probably more than others.
Yeah, I love the weirder ones too. There was one in Kentucky that was similar to that giant Komodo dragon. It's like this giant black and white lizard that people see. And then I always like the Mekele and Bembe stories and everything.
Oh my God, I love those stories. Actually, you know what? That's what I was going to say. Definitely one of my favorite ones is this one called the Inkanyamba, which is like this serpent-like creature seen in this waterfall in South Africa, Howick Falls, and in some of the rivers. And there's very few like documentaries on it. And it, most likely there's some eels or like conflated kind of with folklore, but it's in South Africa, and I was born in South Africa, so I always kind of really liked that story about the Inkanyamba, very cool sort of creature. Nice.
Yeah, I didn't know you were born in South Africa. That's cool. Yeah, Africa's got some crazy ones, scary ones.
Oh yeah. I'd love to go look for the Mokele and Bembe someday. Just go through the Congo. I mean, probably get malaria on the way.
Let's go.
Maybe encounter some warlords, but I guess that's like sort of Indiana Jones style, so that's kind of cool.
I always message Adam Davies. I'm like, take me to the Congo with you, bro, and he's like, no. He's always real
great.
Nice. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he did an awesome review of the Champ series, and he seems like a real nice guy. I hope to cross paths with him someday. I mean, it's one of my favorite parts about this whole kind of online thing is that you meet so many cool people along the way, whether it's just either through online or in person. You make some great connections, and that's been one of the kind of more rewarding parts of cryptozoology, because oftentimes the creatures are very scarcely seen, right, or encountered. So when you meet cool people, and whether it's witnesses or scientists, that sort of thing, people like yourself, just people you can kind of, like if I go to Alabama, I'm definitely going to hit you up, and if you come up here into New England, let me know, that sort of stuff. That's been really cool.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think we'll definitely cross paths and get into some kind of trouble with some cryptids somewhere.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, one of my friends lives up near Beast to Whitehall territory, and
no kidding.
And he wants me to come up there, and he's more into the paranormal side, but he said he would be down to do some of that as well.
Yeah, dude, for sure. I mean, what I was going to say was Whitehall actually is where Lake Champlain ends. So there's like one little bay. It's really cool. I know Seth was telling me when he did the Bray Road documentary a couple of years ago, whenever that was, he was saying that people were telling him they had like champ sightings too. And he's like, man, this is like, you got Bigfoot and champ kind of going on at the same time. And around that part where Whitehall is actually where a lot of the like sightings in the 1800s. There was like whole serpent craze, and even P.T. Barnum was offering like a bounty for this serpent that people were like going on armed hunting parties to try and kill. It was like the shallower kind of thinner parts of Lake Champlain. So it's a really cool area, and you've got the Adirondacks, obviously, which are pretty remote for the most part. You know, not a lot of stuff going on in that mountain range.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, yeah. The just thinking about P.T. Barnum like putting out that request and everything. That's so cool.
It was like $10 or $15,000, which back in like the 1870s, I mean, that was a ton of money.
Seriously, that's wild. That's so cool, man. So tell us a little bit before we go. Tell us a little bit about your future projects and things that are going to be coming up. Yeah, for sure. I mean, right now I'm really in the thick of editing and filming for Lions of the East. I mean, I'm hoping to get that out in the early summer sort of time. Just, New England winter is terrible, so you have a lot of issues with weather and that sort of thing. So we're hoping we'll get a ton of storms that cancel more shoot dates. But yeah, I've got that coming up. I'm going to be dropping a teaser trailer for that soon, within like the next week or so, hopefully. And then aside from that, I do, Sasquatch Out of the Shadows, the YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing some more little interviews and cool stuff with that. I've actually got a sweet interview with a buddy out in Colorado who I interviewed a couple of years ago. He was a Bigfoot researcher out there, really cool guy, Jason Frank. Probably going to maybe do a book next year. I've been thinking about that for a while, so... Nice.
So yeah, definitely stay tuned. I mean, I've got all the social media sites at petakovmedia.com, and just follow me on there. Follow me on Facebook, whatever floats your boat.
Nice. Yeah, and guys, I've got the links to his stuff in the description of this cast as well. Well, yeah, man. Thanks so much for coming on, man. It was awesome, and definitely told us some amazing information, and definitely had me thinking a lot about.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for having me on, man, and keep up the good work. I mean, your YouTube channel is awesome. You've got a lot of great success with that, and just keep it up. I see you're doing the Bigfoot stuff now too, with like a separate channel. That's awesome, and like I said, I hope we kind of cross paths and get to do something in the future.
Definitely, man. Well, thanks again, man, and play some Red Dead for me, because I don't have it yet.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to get through the Easter egg list there and find all the cryptids and the mysteries.
Nice. I think I'm going to rewatch On the Trail of Champ again, because now I'm all hyped up.
Yeah. I just a little plug. I mean, On the Trail of Bigfoot, Seth really is doing like an excellent job with that, so that'll be the second part. So stay tuned, because it's gonna get good.
Oh yeah, you know I will. I think I've got pretty much everything so far, including a few posters and stuff. So
Awesome.
But anyway, man, have a great night, and I can't wait. We'll link up someday in the future and get into some cryptid trouble.
Sounds good to me, man. All right, buddy, take it easy.
All right, have a great night, man.
You too.
All right. Well, guys, that was Aleksander Petakov, and that was just awesome. I'm so glad we got him on here and got to hear about all of that stuff. We could have, of course, always, continued on for another hour and kept going, but we like to keep it slick, keep it sleek, and keep everybody wanting more. And that was man. I love the way that he describes certain things and just explains things. Like, he's just a very intelligent guy, and I'm definitely excited to see his work on the Lions of the East. That's been something that I've been fascinated with, and because I've had sightings myself, as you know, like I said, in Vermont and as well as Alabama, which a lot of people say they aren't here as well, but we've seen them. So my favorite mountain lion sighting though was the one in Virginia that I saw, and it was just standing on the side of the interstate. It was like so muscular, it just looked so weird. I was like, that is one muscular animal. Oh my god, it's a mountain lion. So it was just insane. But anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. What an awesome guest. Thanks again to Aleksander for coming on. Also, awesome name to Aleksander, because, you know, we have the same name, essentially. It's spelled a little bit different, but it's the same name. But anyway, next week we've got my friends from Tarak Chronicles coming on, and we're going to actually have a little bit of a different show. We're going to go a little bit into the paranormal, but we're going to be definitely talking more about some of their adventures into the world of the abandoned, urban exploration. So it's going to be an interesting show. You definitely won't want to miss that. And then, if all goes to plan, I believe the next show we've got Danny Bigbeard, the guy who made the EchoVox app, and he's going to be coming on if all goes to his plan. And I'm going to definitely be asking him some questions about, you know, his paranormal past and experiences, and also he will be promoting his new app. So that should be pretty cool. I'm hoping that works out. But yeah, guys, and then on one thing I forgot to mention, January 30th, I will be on Kat Hobson's show. Be looking out on Facebook. I'll be sharing the link. She should have an event up for that one, I believe. So I will be posting more about that. So it should be really awesome. We got a cool month ahead. I got some cool stuff to share with you guys, as well as some experiments that I'm going to be doing I've got some ideas I want to do with some of my spirit boxes. So you'll be seeing some videos about that coming soon. And my new camera that I got, I will be out in the woods doing some lights out, extremely scary, all alone Bigfoot investigations with my deadlight and my new night vision. It's going to be insane. So you definitely want to be there for that. So yeah, I think that is everything I wanted to say. I hope that everyone has a great rest of the week. I hope you enjoyed the show. A huge thanks again to Aleksander for coming on. Definitely follow his pages and his YouTube and everything. The links are in the description of this, and I've shared a few of the videos on Facebook, so definitely check those out because he does some amazing work. And if you haven't picked up On the Trail of Champ yet, go over to Small Town Monsters website and do that. Really, I always love their work. All those guys do amazing work. Their latest, The Bray Road Beast, I think is streaming on Amazon. I think you can go on Amazon Prime and watch it. If you haven't seen that one yet, it's one of my favorites. So, yeah, huge thanks to Aleksander, and I hope everyone has a good night. I forgot to make him howl, so I'm just going to howl like I normally do, and we will make sure that I don't forget that next time. All right, guys. Arr!